puntos de vista de la Red Nacional de Jornaleras y Jornaleros. Si usted considera que el contenido es ofensivo o inapropiado, lo invitamos a compartir su opinión, queja o sugerencia en nuestra página radiojornalera.org.
If you need a headset, it is over by the door. Make sure you get your headset. The translation is already started. So, okay, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for taking your time on a Tuesday night and coming to the basement of a church. Hall. Sorry, hall, yes. It's a hall. And hopefully tonight we're going to start a conversation. It's not about tonight you're going to get your answers. It's about starting a conversation. It's about hearing different options and different placemates of what it is to value the land, right? And how can we value the land, and what does that take? And we all know it takes money, but tonight our panelists and our moderator is going to be able to take us to go down that road. So thank you. My name is Florence. I'm Pasadena's Organizing for Progress. If you need some food in the middle of it, there's some tacos, there's some rice, and beautifully made by the ladies of the Pasadena Job Center. So give them a big round. But now, let's get messy.
Let's get messy. Okay. I love it. So thank you so much, Flo, Pop, for having this conversation tonight. Let's talk, let's listen. She said it's all about us having conversation about how much we love our land, how much we love Altadena, how much we love being Altadenian. So my name is Heavenly Hughes. I am the co-founder and executive director of My Tribe Rise in the house, for sure. And the reason why I am thankful to be even asked to be the moderator for this particular conversation is because I'm just as interested in understanding how land trust is going to support our community. How will it also preserve the generational wealth within our community, the equity within our community? So I'm not the professional or the expert. I'm here to ask questions just like you all. I'm here to also have that conversation, get some understanding of how we serve one another through the land trust. So I'm really thankful for the moderators that are here. Now, these are the experts that are here, and I'm happy to share space with each one of them. I'm going to give them the mic and let them introduce themselves. But first, I just want to say hello, Altadenians. Come on now. I want to say it again. I know it's a little late, but we in the house, we are survivors. We still have life. I always say that although our community has been desolated, we are the culture, we're the community, we are Altadena. So hello, Altadena. For sure.
Thank you so much, Heavenly. And again, thank you for everyone who's here tonight and watching on live stream. My name is Remy Della Pesa. I use pronouns she, her, and hers. I'm a lifelong Pasadena resident, but I do rep the Dena, as many of us do, and I'm here to talk to you as a community-based land use attorney, and so my whole career has been in community stewardship of land and how to create more racial and social equity as it relates to a commodified land system that we all live in this capitalist world. But what can we do with our land to really support those who have been disenfranchised historically by systems of racism? So that's what I'm here to represent and share with you a little bit of insight from my perspective.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Demetrius Gray. I am an independent long-term disaster recovery consultant. So I'm here from, I'm not one of you, but I'm about to be. And so I'm here from Kentucky and have been supporting your community and figuring out how do I actually put my life back together. And so kudos, so far, we're making good progress. And so I'm happy to be here tonight.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming out tonight. Like Heavenly said, I'm Jasmine Schuper. I'm the founder and executive director of Greenline Housing Foundation. We're a Pasadena-based nonprofit organization that's been around since 2020, and our mission is to close the racial wealth and homeownership gaps and reverse the effects of systemic racism in housing that have happened through practices such as redlining. And we're showing up very specifically in a continuation of our mission for Eaton fire relief, specifically in the Black and Brown communities of Altadena that were impacted by the fires. Also live in Pasadena, have lived in Pasadena for many years, and am still displaced. I live by Eaton Canyon Golf Course. Miraculously, my home does still stand, but for me this is personal in addition to being professional. So really looking forward to sharing with you all tonight and having a conversation about how we can rebuild our community.
Thank you to all three of our panelists that are here. I hear we keep saying rebuild, and I understand exactly what we mean by rebuild. I do feel like it's actually going to be a new build because the Altadena that we know is no longer here with us. The Altadena that I feel like I was raised in is no longer there. So it is a new build, and the promising thing about it being a new build is that we're going to build it. And we want to build it by being in the forefront of the conversation. We want to build it by making sure that we're in all the areas that our voices need to be heard. We're going to build it because Altadena is not for sale. And when I say Altadena is not for sale, it's not to put any pressure on anyone that may not have the bandwidth, the funds, whatever it may be that gap may cause you to decide to make the choice that you need to sell. We want you all to know rather that we're going to do this together. So we're setting up ways where those who want to buy can be able to let us know. Those who want to sell within the community can let us know. And so that's the way we keep it amongst Altadena, within the community of Pasadena and Altadena. That's part of the messaging of Altadena is not for sale. It's also for those vultures that want to come and take our land from us. As you guys know, my Tribe Rise is all about ways to cure violence. And when I think about vultures coming and taking our land and our property, that we have a relationship. We have a relationship with our land. We have a relationship with one another. And when vultures come to take our relationships with our land, one another, that to me is violence. So we are here to be sure that we address that violence as well. So I'm just going to ask my first question. This night is for you all to be able to ask questions. I just want to start the conversation because I want to understand, how does land trust, because my understanding, we are going to talk about land trust, right? Family?
Yes, as a mechanism. One of many options. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. We got many options. I love that. So one of the options I've been hearing a lot of people talk about is land trust. I'm not sure and understand completely how land trust is going to preserve the wealth of the individuals, the families that have been there for many generations, because, which I may not know correctly, I thought that a land trust meant that that nonprofit or that organization would now have ownership of the deed. And if land trust or organizations or businesses have the ownership of the deed, how is that preserving our wealth in the community or in our land? I'll pass it over to Jasmine.
Yeah, I might take a couple liberties just to maybe zoom out first with some ground kind of setting around, right, the Altadena not for sale. What does that mean? And I think, we've chatted a little bit about priority number one is clearly for those who want to stay, how do we all support each other so that you may stay with your land, right? And the process of rebuilding and navigating all of that. And I think, Greenline can speak to the work they're already doing to support folks. I don't want to speak for Demetrius, but I know he has experience with that in kind of his broad background. But then, right, for those folks for whatever reason, who cannot stay with their land, right? What does Altadena not for sale mean to those folks, right? If you need to sell and you need to leave, again, for whatever reason, how do we as a community provide each other with community options to purchase your land? So that as Heavenly said, we are not, our only option is not to sell to corporate private equity investors who don't care about our community, who care about making profit at the expense of a disaster and tragedy. And sadly, there are many folks out there who want to do that and are starting to do that already. So it is upon us to take care of us and find those options. And so I'm zooming out just to give you like the quick kind of appetizer platter of like what some of those options could be, recognizing that we can all be creative and think of other ones as well. But just quickly, right, one option being, how do we support individual transactions between a seller from Altadena and a buyer from either Altadena, someone who used to live in Altadena and had to leave because prices were too high, or moved for other reasons but would love to come back to their community, right? How do we facilitate those just one-on-one connections? So that's a piece of the community, kind of taking care of community puzzle. The second option is around, and Jasmine can speak more to the work she's doing at Greenline on this, is we're in an urgency space to some extent right now because we do know the vultures are circling, right? And is there an entity, a community entity, that can act quickly and that can acquire the land from a seller, but not with the intention of holding on to that land forever and not trying to develop it, but just to say, we're here to be kind of the stopgap so that you can leave and sell your land, and we will hold it while we all recover and process this trauma and plan together for the future of what that land should be. And then they will transfer ownership or dispose of that land to a final end owner, right? TBD, who that would be, but that is a role, and usually we call that a land bank. It's kind of like a holding entity, right? Again, they're not interested in keeping it forever. They're there to like be that kind of emergency shut-off valve for the community in the meantime. The third option is where, finally, land trusts could be one of the like sub-options, is we find an entity or organization, not because we already talked about the one-on-one individuals, right? But are there organizations that are community-based organizations that become the end buyer of the land? So you're a seller, you need to leave Altadena, you have an entity that you are selling your land to who will then either develop it and own that land forever. A land trust is a form of a nonprofit entity. The goal of a community land trust, though, is to take land off the speculative market so that it's no longer a commodity to be bought and sold to gain wealth off of, right? Instead, the ownership of that land trust is made up of community members, and their mission is to keep residents in affordable housing forever. So that is a strategy that is kind of separate from a goal of building individual Black, brown, Asian wealth, right? If you're taking property off of the market in order so that it's no longer this wealth building asset, it's now seen as a community asset to be kept affordable for the users, which are the community, we're no longer participating in the market economy of land. Okay, so that's where we do need to be having these conversations, are what are our goals, right? If one of our goals is to find ways to keep land affordable forever for folks that need that, then a land trust could be an option. If one of our goals, though, is also to restore Black and brown wealth, individual family wealth that Altadena has built over generations, Maybe a land trust is not the mechanism for that particular priority. So I'm just going to stop there. And yeah, Jasmine, I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Just before, can I
Yeah.
keep your thought for a moment?
Mhm.
Because you just shared a lot, right?
Yes, I know.
You just shared a lot with us. And so I just want to be sure that we ask, because I heard you talking about community to community. I want to understand how are we making that happen, community to community. I know a lot of our organizations are saying that we're collecting information about buyers, we're collecting information about sellers. How are we sharing that information? I just wanted to point out that. And then I just want to see, we had 2 questions really quick. Since you shared a lot of information right now, is that good? Are you good with, okay. Is there any questions that anyone wanted to address that Remy just shared with us? I saw your hand first. And you, if you want the mic or if you want to just share your name.
My name is Natasha. I live in Altadena. My question is the second thing that you talked about. So that kind of stopgap where it's not necessarily person to a person, but it's a person to
I'm so
something,
sorry.
not necessarily a land trust or whatever, but something. You want me to talk in the mic? Okay. All right, got you. So, so that second piece, and then how would they be compensated? Because you're often hearing they need to do this because they need to move on with their lives, right? So if it's that second entity, what does that look like?
Thank you, Flo.
Yes, I'm going to pass it to Jasmine because that's her role she's playing.
Yeah, and I can answer that question a little bit more specifically, but we recognize that in the community, and Remy alluded to it earlier, that there are people who want to stay and rebuild, but maybe feel like financially they don't have the means to. Those are the people that we want to help connect with resources so that they will feel confident that they have what they need to rebuild, right? So that's a separate conversation. There are some for whom they don't want to, right? They just don't want to. Everybody here has choices, they have agency, right? And that might very well be a choice for a family who lost their home in the fire. In that case, recognizing that they need the funds immediately, if we can identify, like Remy said, a community-minded entity or organization that is able to purchase the land at a fair price, right? Not trying to lowball or get the cheapest or exploit the disaster for capitalism, right? Like a community-minded, a community-centered, a community-informed organization purchases that lot, and then they hold it as part of a bank, right? Like Remy was saying. They work with other community and housing stakeholders to determine values around the end use of that land, right? And what disposition of that land looks like. Specifically for Green Line, we just purchased our first lot last week, just closed escrow on it. It was a family who did not want to rebuild, but they wanted to ensure that the future use of the land remained in the community for the community, right? We purchased that lot. We're now going to hold it in trust. What I meant when I said it's going to be consistent with our ongoing mission, that is Black and brown wealth, homeownership preservation and wealth restoration. That is our mission. That's who we've always existed as an organization, right? So then our priority with that land, one of many, right, that are going to be a component of this effort. There are going to be many priorities. Our specific priorities as an organization is restoring that wealth. And so what that means for us could be multifold in some of the options that we're considering with that. One is we're going to clear the land, right, and either sell the land to a Black or brown family who is looking to purchase in the area but might be cost prohibited, but maybe they can buy land and they can build. Maybe that, is more feasible for them, and or clearing that land, developing on it because of our access to capital and cheap capital and the mix of philanthropy, being able to develop on that and then sell that at an affordable price to a Black or brown family so that they can attain home ownership and the wealth building that it affords, right? And so that we can retain the cultural and ethnic makeup that makes Altadena so beautiful and so unique and so diverse. So that's options, right? Those are the options in that. And then on the one hand, the family from whom that land was purchased, they get their money, they get a competitive, I don't even want to say fair. I mean, we paid a competitive price for it, recognizing that we want to contribute to making people whole because they've lost so much. And then also our current conversations are with philanthropy and capital as far as developing on that, and then how we can offer a product to people purchasing that keeps it affordable, that keeps it cheaper, and then they can, and we can proceed like that, right? And so that's an option. That is one such option, and one that gives at least the confidence and the assurance of the community that not all of these lots that are being purchased are going to speculative investors, that there are organizations that care about the future and well-being and ethnic makeup, quite frankly, of Altadena, that makes it so unique, if that makes sense.
Thank you both so much. I know we have one more question before we move on. Melissa? I didn't. Yeah, yeah. If you could stand up. Oh, for the streaming, we're gonna be. I guess I'm gonna be walking around.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Michelson from Altadena Not For Sale, if you haven't noticed that. My question is, and thank you for hosting all of this and being here. I'm really excited to learn more. What I've been trying to figure out is, say I am an end buyer through Greenline, or I'm a local Altadenan, and or a nonprofit. I'm assuming it has to be a nonprofit status. I'm just wondering, what are the criteria for people that want to buy the land from the trust? That's all. Thank you.
That's a good question, Melissa. So I'm gonna bring the mic back. I thought we may have had more than one mic. I'm gonna check.
I'll speak generally. I won't speak for Greenline. So just real quick, shout out to Jasmine and Greenline. They are the only community-based organization that has stepped up to date, right? We are hoping that we will have more options for everybody. It does require capital. We're asking all our friends in philanthropy to please also step up. We need the money that you have raised. Because we do want to pay for land, right? Give people their money. So just again, highlighting that Greenline is our only community-based option, and that are banking the land right now for future use to be determined. But in terms of, generally thinking through how to vet or who are qualified purchasers who are individuals, I think that is, again, an opportunity for the community to come together and decide. And that's, space that we can have here with My Tribe Rise, with the various organizing efforts that are grassroots here in Altadena, to decide, like, you all know each other, right? Like, if you're truly a community member, you know someone in this room. And so finding out how we can organize and coordinate and systematize some way of bringing forth names of people who are interested in purchasing and helping connect those relationships with those who are interested in selling. So to be totally honest, I don't think we have that system in place yet. And that is part of this infrastructure that I think we're all trying to build out right now, of what recovery infrastructure needs to include. And I think that's a piece of it, is really figuring out how we're going to hold the communication between potential buyers and potential sellers, and how to connect those dots.
Yeah, and just something to add to that as well. So pre-wildfire, our mission was close the racial wealth and homeownership gaps, down payment, and we do that in 3 buckets, right? So the first of those buckets is facilitating access to homeownership. We do that through down payment grants. The second bucket is homeownership preservation for Black and brown people. We do that through home maintenance grants and pro bono and low bono estate planning and legal services. And then the third component is financial education, right? So taking that into wildfire, taking that mission into wildfire relief and how we're showing up, there are 2 phases to our relief efforts as an organization. And I think this will help to just give a little context of to how specifically, we're showing up and where this land acquisition piece could fit, and connecting, people who maybe want to purchase with possible lots available for sale from the organizations, hopefully many community organizations that are able to acquire land and hold it in trust and get it off the speculative market. And so phase 1 of our wildfire relief involves helping people locate, procure, and pay for long-term temporary housing in or as close to the community as possible for up to 1 year or $40,000 per family. And so we have a corporate lease agreement that we just executed with 100+ units, recognizing that if we want to give people the chance and hope to rebuild, then they have to have stable housing in the meantime, right? That is a crucial component of any conversations around, do I want to build back on my lot? And so that's phase one of our plan. And so we have an intake form that we're collecting data and information on people to connect with their actual needs, where they're at, recognizing that the spectrum of need of this is very wide, right? There are people who need more than others, who need less than others. There's the different insurance company. There are a number of variables at play. So we have to connect individually with each person. So that's the first phase of wildfire relief. Second phase for us involves the actual rebuilding costs and recognizing that for our target population, which is Black and brown homeowners at this point, there will be a significant gap in and above what FEMA or insurance will cover for that cost of rebuilding. We do not want it to be cost prohibitive for people to rebuild. And so we're offering capital in the form of grants, hopefully mostly, and or there might be some debt associated with it, but up to $250,000 per family for the actual cost of rebuilding their home. So that's kind of long term. And then another component of that is this land acquisition piece, right? And that's for people, so that there's two spokes on the long term plan. Long term for people who want to rebuild is helping you to get the money in the capital up to $250K to do it. Long term for people who do not want to rebuild is us acquiring those land, paying fair price for that land, and then like I said, either developing it, making it available for purchase to our target demographic, what our target demographic has always been. Another thing that we're doing is prioritizing down payment grants for Eaton Fire renters who lost their homes in the fire, who now want to purchase or feel like they want to purchase but lack that down payment or lack access to, an asset or an affordable home. So we are prioritizing that. That's one of our mechanisms as an organization for helping people to be able to purchase, helping renters to be able to purchase and connecting those dots. So we already have a pipeline that's starting to grow of people who have applied for a down payment grant, who are renters, or Black or brown renters who lost their home in the Eaton fire. So we have that. So it's connecting with sellers. And so I've got a network. I'm an agent. We've got agents on our team. Of agents who are like, okay, I know somebody who's looking to list. Do you have a buyer? Do you have a buyer for this so they can sell to somebody in the community? Have you identified a buyer? So that's something that, as far as our process and our intake, is currently underway for us. And one thing I do want to mention too, it's vernacular as well, but when we talk about a trust, right? A community land trust operates because they own the land. And so if there's property on that land and it's transferred, the ownership of the land is not transferred, right? And so that's a component, that's one of the mechanisms of keeping it permanently affordable. That is a mechanism for affordability and could be good for anti-displacement. Again, another value is also wealth restoration and wealth creation. And so just to paint the kind of a holistic picture, that there are a number of tools involved in what will need to be many options of a rebuilding effort in the community. So just wanted to share that kind of long-windedly. Yeah.
That was great information. Absolutely great information. I'll be contacting you, Jasmine. We have a question.
My name is Zaire Calvin. First, I wanted to. My name is Zaire Calvin, and I first want to acknowledge everybody that's in this room, because this looks like Altadena. And so can we clap that up for the first time? I've been to a million different venues, and I haven't seen the diversity of seeing Altadena and how we look as a community, so I would like to start there. My question would be, thanking Jasmine also, out of all these different venues, I've been to 10 million of them, 10 million town halls, all the different things. To start, Green Line's been the only organization that's actually stepped in to help and start and be about their mission and everything they're saying. and I'm even a part of that. So I literally just got housing recently, possibly coming up, and signed contracts. And from the beginning, they're the only organization that I've actually spoke about right now, because they're the only ones doing something actively. Everybody else is ideas, thoughts, and process, and no one has put money where all these thoughts have been. They're the only program that has, and I'm chasing, running around looking for all of this also for the community. So that's why I can actually say that. My question, to go into my question is, Jasmine, that I worry about is the same thing, how the community can help in that, because that there are community people who are trying to put together things like what you're doing and how they could collaborate to use their resources. I know everybody has insurance money and all that stuff, and I don't know how far, for the ones who can help, who have extra, who would help secure, and then also the fear that the houses are being sold so fast right now and going on the market so fast, how we can collaborate to secure those houses as they come up on the market.
Share the mic, literally.
I'll talk about what I don't know about. So
Okay.
I will let these ladies take it.
Yeah, I'll speak maybe to the latter bit, Zaire, in terms of, how we can collaborate around acquisition strategies. And I think this dovetails a little bit with some of the comments that have started to come up around renters. And I know there's a number of renters from Altadena who are interested in exploring shared ownership models. And so, renters who haven't been able to purchase before, but could a few renters come together and buy a property together? And could they build, a couple smaller homes on a large lot instead of one big home? And so I will just say that those conversations are starting to happen. I don't know if Brooke is here, but there are tenant leaders from Altadena that we can make sure you're connected with if you resonate with this concept. And I want to shout out the newly formed Altadena Tenants Union as well. That's really, centering renters as part of the conversation around land, in support from Pasadena Tenants Union. So just to say those conversations are starting, and there are mechanisms legally where we can explore what that could look like, and again, try to find the creative financial tools to support with kind of backing an effort that is in around shared ownership. So I'll just put that one out as another kind of possible option for folks. And then I don't know if you wanted to speak, Jasmine, to anything.
I would like to speak. Oh, yeah. Did you want to say something towards what she just said? Yeah. Really quick? Okay, go ahead.
Zaire, you're great. I'm not the only, Greenline's not the only organization, because there's no way that this could happen in a silo that requires all hands on deck. So there are a lot of organizations out there, helping and doing work and on the ground. But what I will say, and I think you bring up a really good point, Oh, as far as housing. Thank you. Yeah. What I will say around your question, because it was a good one, as far as how can we as a community come together and establish a big pot of funds or something, and so that we can. So there's conversations that I've been involved in with other county organizations and even state level organizations about this idea of a big pool of funds. Greenline has been identified, and among other community organizations, as possible implementers of that. The only problem with that, when you're dealing with that level of capital, is that it takes a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time to deploy, and meanwhile, Meanwhile, the developers and the BlackRocks of the world have the capital right now, right? And so, whereas that is something that's we're currently in conversations about, this like land bank idea where there's a big pot of funds that's pooled and then deployed specifically for, there's acquisitions, there's economic development, there's a number of different, there's conservancy, there's a number of different pots within that. It's just that philanthropy takes a really long time sometimes when you're talking about the scale and magnitude of resources required for this effort. And so, kind of what I've been telling people is that there are two things that have to happen concurrently, right? And that's what we need. We need fast capital, which, the first lot that we purchased was literally like, okay, I have this opportunity. An agent friend of mine was like, look, the seller, I think that you would be an organization whose mission would be one that they would want to pay attention to. Can you buy this lot? Like, I picked up the phone, I called a philanthropist, and I was like, put your money where your mouth is, give us $500,000 to buy this lot. And they wired the funds the next day, right? We need that type of capital response, and also we need the long-term, big pot rebuilding capital that will help to scale this, because none of this can happen without scale, right? And so that's an important component. So as you guys are having conversations, it helps. Like if you go to the entities that kind of have been the PCFs and the CCFs and the the entities that kind of have this and push them, say, hey, just let them know, right? They need to be aware of what the community needs and what the community wants, right? They're supposed to be acting and deploying these resources on behalf of the community, and so your voice is very powerful in that as well. Yeah.
So that was really great information, Zaire. You got your answers? Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I want to applaud and echo the great work that Greenline is doing. I do want to just talk, because what we're talking about now, when we're talking about purchasing properties, we're talking about land trusts, it sounds like that's more in the future versus what I'm seeing right now. Because there are organizations that are boots on the ground, out here doing work, serving many, many families. And we're one of them, My Tribe Rise. And so what we're and what I'm recognizing is the right now is a very complex housing problem. So we're trying to find out. I heard you bring up that you're helping right now with immediate housing. Are you doing that now? And
Yeah, so long-term temporary housing, because there's a spectrum, there's a continuum. There's like immediate, we need housing right now, and then it's like, where are we going to be for this long-term temporary that it's going to take us to rebuild? So that's where we're focusing, is that long-term temporary.
Wonderful, because I'm trying to make sure we're connecting the dots. So just even right now, My Tribe Rise, Flint Ridge, and some other organizations, we're paying for hotel fees for over 30 families, and we're wondering, and when we're talking to other groups, I'm not hearing that long-term housing is available right now. I'm not finding out, like, where is it at? Where is it at in Pasadena? Where is it at in the local areas? Is that something that you can help us with? I don't know if you want to talk about that now. We can talk about it later.
No,
okay. So recognizing a number of things. One, the people in our community, a lot of people in our community, there were a lot of generational homes, homes that have been owned for many years, and people who were paying mortgages for many years that maybe right now aren't equipped financially to all of a sudden pay market rent because housing costs have exploded so significantly, right? And then you also have seniors. We have seniors who are on fixed income, right, who can't afford a $3,200 two-bedroom apartment. Right. And yes, and renters as well. And so one of the things that we've entered into to help mitigate that supply issue and that disconnect of these income requirements that a lot of landlords and apartment buildings have is that we've entered into a corporate lease agreement. And we are working with another housing organization, but Greenline Housing Foundation has entered into a corporate lease agreement for an apartment building in Glendale that's a brand new build that has over 100 units available. And we are, because Greenline is an entity now named on the lease, we are connecting people on our intake list based on their needs with units available in this building that have been set aside for Greenline to help with long-term temporary housing. And so
We are subsidizing that because some people can pay something. Some people have loss of use, but it hasn't kicked in yet. Or some people, most people, are still paying a mortgage. And we can talk about, Assembly Bill 238, which is trying to help give some relief to people who are still homeowners who are still paying a mortgage. And now being forced to pay rent depending on what their insurance looks like. There's plenty of people that don't have loss of use at all, right? And so we're subsidizing that because some people are like, you know what, I can pay $2,000 a month, but this rent is crazy. This is it's $3,500. So we'll subsidize $1,500 a month for you for up to a year and then reevaluate it at the end of the lease term at the end of the year. So that's $18,000 a year that we're subsidizing for them. We're doing that for multiple families. So that is part of that long-term temporary housing. And one of the solutions that we've identified is this apartment building in Glendale and being a corporate lease provider on that. And so, sorry, we just moved in. Yeah. Okay.
When I needed a place, I contacted Green Line. I got my keys yesterday. So, they're helping real people. So I just wanted to say, I'm a definite example. I just got my keys yesterday. And I was like, how do these kids pay this rent? This is ridiculous. I need help. And she's like, okay.
That's absolutely awesome. Congratulations. I know that, and I believe that you probably also work with Caitlin?
Yes, I'm civic soul.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
organization. Yep.
Oh, okay. We work closely with Caitlin, and people are being able to transition into these homes these apartments that are available. Yes, we've heard stories like yours of people being able to get their keys. Yet I know that there's still so many that are not having keys, and I just want to be sure that we can get those connections, because I'll just mention, we have our lunches here, which you were at one of our lunches just recently, where we have over 150 families come, and the first thing they put down on our sheet is, we need housing. And I call everybody to find out how can we get housing. But I understand there's a process. Sometimes it's kind of hard to be able to relay that process to someone that's desperately in need, right? So it's just good to know that these connections are happening. Because that's the complexity right now. There's thousands of people that I'm concerned about that within this next couple of weeks that may be unhoused. Those who don't have that ALE, those who don't have funding to just, FEMA's ran out, Red Lines, their first emergency response funding is ran out. So I'm really concerned about that. I just want to see, and I want to hear from Demetrius. And I also want to hear more about the rebuild. Of course, we're starting out with housing. We know that once people have housing, then they can discuss more about the rebuild and how things are going to be moving forward in our future. So I want to hear something from Demetrius about our rebuild. And one other subject that I know that we really need to talk about is the reverse mortgages.
Listen, sometimes I have something to contribute, and when I don't, I just don't say anything. So, but what I'll tell you is that I think part of this is, first of all, starting from the beginning, which is that you need a team around you to get through the recovery process. This sort of idea that you can do any of this alone is not sound. Like, you should really encourage folks to, hey, you need a partner. And so those partners are at places like Green Line and places like the luncheons that My Tribe Rise hosts. And so while it may be challenging, and I think we're looking at some more digital solutions for those who have been further displaced. And so I would start there in putting an individual recovery plan or a disaster recovery action plan, whatever it's called, in place, and having somebody work with you to figure out what those specific circumstances are, because that is really what's going to help these organizations identify those who, are most at risk of potentially having to sell their property, right? And so when you sort of start from the beginning, right, which is like, hey, these people need an action plan in place, and here's why you might be at risk, because the coverage gap is too big, or decision fatigue is a real thing in the process. Hey, I'm tired of making a decision or making decisions about new grants and this and that and the third. I would generally say that, like, there is the truth of the matter is that the financial products that need to exist to ensure a successful transition of property, they don't actually exist yet. And so what that means is that they have to be created in order for successful transition to happen. So, if you want to, sell the property to somebody else who's in the community, they'll just go get a mortgage. We know that it's not that simple. And so what's happening under the hood is that we're creating the new financial products that need to exist with co-guarantors like foundations and syndications of, more wealthy property owners who are of the community who want to contribute, and all of those things. And, irrevocable trusts that have existed and have cash, but they're like, hey, we don't know what to do with it, right? Those are the sort of things that are happening right now. And while it's not necessarily always encouraging to hear that those things take time, that is actually what's happening, right? And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention the supervisor's recovery commission that she announced, several ARC, the Altadena Recovery and Rebuilding Commission. That when you sort of talk about these sort of larger pools of funding and how that is going to happen, the mechanics of that, my understanding is that that organization is centrally focused on these sort of big dollar questions. What does the macro $10 billion solution look like? And so, yeah, I think generally speaking, it's like there are creative solutions. I'm not certainly anti-land trust. I come from Louisville, Kentucky. There's a land bank there. I've seen what happens when one doesn't work, which is that there's a whole bunch of land in a thing and you can't get it out, right? And so that happens a lot. But I think when you're conscious of the potential knock-on effects of a land trust and sort of saying, okay, well, let's talk about the real mechanics of what does it look like? How do we fund our schools? What probably doesn't make a lot of sense to put a lot of property into a non-tax paying entity, right? Because that then hurts the school system, right? And so you want to think about those things. And so I think one of the things you want to do is sort of, while you want to do something, you want to sort of think deeply about what is the second order effect of the decision that we're making, right? And it'll prove out over the long haul, and there won't be a sense of regret. The other thing that I think a lot about is just like much of this property that we're looking at is heirs property, right? So, and there are children and grandchildren who are potential heirs to the asset that you're looking at right now. I think we can think really deeply about them, right? And sort of steelman the case for why we're making the purchases that we're making today. So reframing the argument a bit, because really we need to sort of cast the line into the future, right? This piece of property is for the children of this particular person, the grandchildren of this particular person, right? Because that's what we're really trying to preserve. And so it makes the actual financial argument easier. I've been to so many coalitions and groups at this point that I keep seeing random people who I meet around town, which is just wonderful, outside coffee shops and great places. So I would say generally be encouraged, because there are a lot of creative ideas and creative solutions, but it does take a little bit of time to sort of get them on paper, pitch them to funders, and then say, okay, I need $20 million. Now, a little bit of background on me is my career, I've raise money for for-profit entities, about $105 million worth. And so, like, it just takes time to sort of get to the place where you can convince folks and get enough conviction around the table. But I think there's a lot of intent to do exactly what Jasmine is sort of underscoring.
For sure.
Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Good information. We have a question. If you could share your name too.
Good evening. My name is Elise Preston Mallory. And as I'm sitting here, one question keeps going through my mind. Why are people selling? Some people I understand why they're selling. But others I fear that they're selling because they feel it's too much to build. They realize they're underinsured or maybe uninsured. They know they have a gap. Is there any way we can maybe kind of find those people? And maybe we look at some of the resources that we're trying to gather to be focused to help them feel, I can do this. There are people that are going to help me. They're going to carry me forward. They will help me close my gaps. And maybe we can stop some of this land being put on the market by getting that message into the community and finding that group.
People together to talk about subsidies that can help us within that gap. Because my concern was, I've been hearing about certain adjusters or even consultants speaking with our Altadena community and family, and when they express about that gap that they do not have for that new build, they might they're automatically kind of saying, you don't have enough for a new build, so your option is to sell. And that's what's put fear in me. That's what's scaring me when that's what the consultants and adjusters and different people are saying. That's where I want to have the conversation is, how do we step in when an adjuster tells my mom, my family, that you don't have enough to insurance and you want to step away? I say take a pause. Too many people automatically are feeling distressed and they're feeling like, I need to make a quick decision. We don't have to make a quick decision. This is our community. We can take our time and think about it. And I feel like if we take our time, we don't know what subsidies are going to come down the line. It might not be here right this moment, but we know we keep hearing them rolling out new projects, rolling out new money. I say just take a pause. Let's have these conversations like we're doing tonight, where we're talking about what our options are. We all can be proactive and do our due diligence to find out about more opportunities. We started this conversation off talking about options that are available. That's what I'm telling the clients that we're meeting with. That's our disaster plan. Pause before you make a quick decision. You've been in your property for many years. My parents bought our property back in 1972. I'm pausing before I make a decision. And that's the first thing I want to say. Let's first take a pause and let's talk.
Yeah, I thank you so much for that, Heavenly, and Demetrius, I'll pass it to you. But I think what I'm hoping for tonight, you know, as someone who loves Altadena and wants to support everyone here, is how do we arm all of you with all of the information you need to tell your friends, your neighbors, your family members that they can pause because there are organizations and resources available. And there might be others who are in this audience who are additional resources for all of us, right? That it's not just three of us up here, like we're just here to spark conversation, but I'm hoping that through My Tribe Rise and other folks in the room, if you you're connected to other folks providing long-term temporary housing for individuals. How do we collate all of those resources? How do we collate the various subsidies that we know about, right? And make sure that all of you, before you leave here, feel like you know where you can send people to get that information, so you can tell them you can pause because there's a network around you.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Just before you say what you're going to say, Demetrius, don't forget it, is that even with Green Line, I just want us to know that it's going to take all of us, the whole of us, to be able to make one another whole. Because even I appreciate everything that Green Line is doing. Yet, when we're in these luncheons every weekend or every week, we're talking about Green Line. We're talking about Caitlin. We're talking about all the different pieces. It's all types of agencies that's helping us become whole. So understand that we're all working together. Sometimes I feel like people think that we're in competition. We're not in competition with one another. We're here to love one another. We're here to know what we need from one another to be able to be whole. So let's just keep that in mind, that we're all in this together, and that we want to know what each agency, each opportunity and option that's there. And when I think about Jasmine, and I love all the work that she's put in, I think about the fact that even that took time. It's a process to get to where Green Line is at today. So everything is a process. So let's be sure we don't forget that in the midst of the distress, in the midst of the heaviness, in the midst of the long night, that we say, pause. And for me, I always go to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and ask God, help me to pause, give me wisdom and knowledge, give me understanding and peace, even in the midst of the disaster.
Thanks, Heavenly. I would say that, like, so up to this point, I've done, I think, 191 now disaster recovery action plans. And in some cases, there's not a pause button in those, because and I agree wholly with what she said around, we first have to make sure that the financial other solutions exist. Today, they do not exist. And so I want to be like have both feet on the ground with all of you about, like, the solutions aren't there yet, right? And so I'm using every ounce of my accounting degree and, fintech background to figure out what are the things that need to be built in order to make it possible. And I think Jasmine's doing the same. And there's other minds that are also trying to figure, but also not be predatory, also be sensitive to what the community was and is. And I would sort of reverse what was said earlier, which is, given the number of people that I've spent time with here, I do think that you can have something that resembles what you once knew. But you have to know where it came from, right? And, like, what was the origin? Because that was a question that I asked when I got here. It's like, what made Altadena Altadena? Like, where did it come from? Like, who did it, right? And what I've stumbled upon is that the answer to that question was in its seniors. Like, its seniors actually were the ones who sort of did the hard work, right? And so that's why, like, there's such a focus, because I think as you sort of think about the rebuild and what's next, you really need to preserve the equity, not just the financial equity, but the sort of sweat equity that existed within the community. Because when you sit down with I've spent a lot of time with Leslie Aiken since I got here, if you know her. I've spent a lot of time with Sadiqa. I've spent a lot of time with, really senior folks in your community. And the way that they talk about it, you're like, there's the thing, right? When they talk about the fact that they knew the community before it had sidewalks, right? You're like, oh, okay. And what they did with their children. Well, some streets have sidewalks, thank God. But, because I've had few close calls. That's right, few close calls. But what I would say is that, like, I think the essence of that is really where we can sort of draw our strength from as we think about the rebuilding process and the work that they've already done. But you really do need to have an individual plan around what it looks like.
And I'm going to double click on that as well. People, to your question, Elise, going back to your question, how do we identify those people? It's information, and how do we keep those people from selling out of desperation or hopelessness? It's information, right? And so it's both information on the end of providers and agencies, right? Like, okay, we need data. It's so much of this will have to be data driven from the standpoint of, okay, here's the data. Here are the number of people with reverse mortgages. Here are the number of people that, XYZ. Here are the number of people that have no insurance. Here are the number of people. It's really going to come down to the aggregation of data in a centralized place in a way that we can make decisions off of that agencies that are doing the work. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. This is an all hands on deck effort. There is no one organization that can do this, no matter how big they are. There is no one organization, period. We have to work together in collaboration, and coordination is going to be key to the success of this effort, period. And I've been in a lot of spaces where that's the focus, but I do think it comes down to data and case management. Back to Demetrius's point about your individual recovery plan. Like, what is your plan that's different from the Joneses plan, that's different from the Smiths plan? Like, what is your individual plan? And so there's going to have to be coordination and case management. We've got all these entities, right? Green Line included, that has intakes, right? That we have intakes. We're trying to work now with an organization that is doing pre-development architecture services pro bono for people of color affected by the Eaton fire, and creating a comprehensive pre-development plan for them that is just like, here's your lot, here was your parcel, here's option A, option B, option C, option D of rebuild, here are different styles. Here's your budget based on what you have. I mean, it's just very comprehensive, right? Then they get that plan. Then they're like, okay, it feels less abstract. It feels less daunting. It feels like this, it feels possible. And or I know what shortfalls I need to make up. I know what gaps I need to fill. Then I go to XYZ organizations, right? And I say, this is how, then I go to capital and I'm like, this is how much I need, but it's quantifiable and it's based not on, like I said, an abstract concept or fear mongering or anything like that. It's based on something very clear. So the organization that we're working with that's providing these services, called Office of Office, we're compiling lists, right? Because there are some people on our intake form that are also on their list that have signed up for those pre-development services already. So far, they have produced they have about the same number as we do on our intake form, but it's comprehensive. It's walking people through the process through each phase, right? It's not, and there is immediate assistance that's needed. There's medium-term assistance that's needed. There's long-term assistance that's needed. How do we coordinate all of those efforts, right? And give people information and data to make informed and sound decisions.
Thank you. I know, Flo, you had a question.
I think the question that I struggle with is, and there's a lady in the audience, Miss Sharon Strong, she's like, why? Is she deals heavily with seniors. And I think there's a narrative, and Dimitri said it as well, that to give the legacy on to their children's and their grandchildren. There's a lot of seniors that are in Altadena that don't have family. It stops with them. Who's thinking about them? Because I noticed a lot of times when I was doing the social media, when it first hit, there was a lot of great stories of my neighbor next door and she doesn't have nobody and I had to check up on her. There is many seniors like that. They don't know QR codes. They don't know how to fill out forms. They are 1 degree away from not being fear, but overwhelmness. And very easy to have predators. So easy. And they don't have you guys next door no more.
Can I say something? Because a lot of this is fine. There is a group. They're called Out Together. And what they do is they're building like a captain area for them. And I think that would be a great venue to reach out, to your point, before they get scared, before they start making those decisions, those people are your primary contacts because they're reaching out to their blocks of people, understanding where they are, what their status is, what they need to do, what they're afraid of, and they're a great resource to tie into these other organizations that you're speaking to.
We've had two from all together, like, hey, so-and-so is thinking about selling, can you talk to them?
Right, and so
so-and-so wants to buy.
funneling that information to them so it gets to them, and then making those relationships happen is a better, I think, is a quicker way of getting what we need, where we need to get to.
Alltogether.org.
Yes.
Really quick, if you want me to just give us. Are you from Alta Gather?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Unless, I don't think the rest of the folks are here, right?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Allie. I'm from Altadena. My house burned down. I'm also one of those people who's desperately trying to stay, but very underinsured, so trying to figure it out. But so help me God, we will find a way. And I started working with All Together because I found them on Instagram, and after the fires, I was just looking for who was doing the organizing work that I didn't already know. They put together a block captain program, so people opt into it. Anybody in this room who lived in Altadena can opt into being a block captain. You just get quickly trained on what that means, and basically what that means is that you choose an area that is around where you lived, and you connect with those neighbors. And you know your neighbors already if you're a block captain. Like, I have neighbors here tonight that are here because I invited them to come here because I knew them from walking my dog every day. And so already been speaking to neighbors before the fires because they're my neighbors, and then after the fires we're checking in on each other and then checking in to see, like, all right, who needs housing? Who needs this kind of resource? Who needs help filing like an SBA loan application? Who needs help even knowing that that exists? So if you can have these like block captains that represent small portions of the neighborhood, each person can then be, block captain can be responsible for disseminating information about something like Green Line and saying, okay, I've had a couple neighbors saying they're thinking of selling. So every single time I talk to them, I'm like, where are you at on that? What do you need to stay? Do you want to stay? If you really want to leave, are you open to this other community option? So if you have all of these people spread out throughout Altadena who are responsible for reporting that information to their little subset of group of people that they already know and have relationships with, it's just a helpful networked way to get that information to people. And a lot of our block captains are older, and some of them are younger, and they're bridging the gap regardless of their age, of figuring out, okay, I have a neighbor who, like you mentioned, is a senior, doesn't have family, doesn't maybe use their phone for anything other than phone calls. Can I take them to the disaster recovery center? Or I met a 22-year-old girl recently who just takes care of her elderly grandfather. She didn't know any of this. Her dad died last year, so I took her to the recovery center. We walked through all the filing application processes, getting her new ID, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really useful network, and if you're interested in being a block captain, if you want to come talk to me, I'm happy to connect you to the organization so you can get started on that.
And then I see you, Zaire, raise your hand. I see Melissa, I see Jill. Was that Derek? Derek, did you have your hand up?
Voice booms. I don't need the mic. I can
You do.
Can everybody
It's
do it? Do I need
for
it
the
for
streaming.
the stream? Okay. I didn't want to. I don't even know where to start. There's so much information that's been disseminated in here, and I think so. First of all, Derek Johnson. I am a resident of Pasadena for the past 13 years. I've known heavily through some commission work that I've done, but I'm also the vice president at the United Way. And we've actually started a fire fund. We've been in these conversations. We're trying to figure out exactly where we need to deploy resources. We're trying to figure out how to be more proximate to the issues. We're meeting with other philanthropies who actually have resources. And I just want to kind of piggyback on what Dimitri has stated a lot. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing with the resources that we have. There's so many specific issues that exist, and we're still scrambling, trying to figure out how to deploy, how to specifically be proximate, what needs to be prioritized, which communities need to be most, kind of first on the list in terms of like what we're trying to get accomplished. It is daunting just trying to figure out with finite resources what to do first, how to stay consistently engaged in this process, not have those resources be diluted because something else like comes up that could also get some accelerant and some support. And even the information you just provided was fantastic, but there's no centralized database technology so everybody has that access to information on a consistent basis. So I'm only standing up to say, these meetings are great. How do we really create like a centralized, like uniform communication system that can be communicated effectively to everybody so everyone stays on the same page about what's available, when it's available? And the other component to what Florence was saying is that you have a lot of seniors who do not use technology, so what's the other mechanism to create, right? So I just want to say that we're here, we're in support of anything that anybody wants to do. I'm at any meeting I can sit at. I want to talk to everybody. We have a delegation of folks coming in from worldwide literally next Tuesday to actually do exploration of Altadena, have a conversation with Bishop Milton. I'm trying to put some other dollars behind the intermediary supports that have nothing to do with housing. There are people who actually are dealing with trauma from losing everything, right? The conversations around those counseling and psychological supports, and we're getting information about the child care centers that don't exist, and people still need to actually work, and so there's so much. So to Dimitri's point, even though we have some resources, they're finite, and we want to use them correctly, but it is, and I'm responsible for developing the strategies and what we need to do. So anyway, I say all this to say, I would love to talk to anybody in here about continuing to build out coalitions, to put together like additional convenings, to let us know how we can be most responsive, but it's a lot. And I know that everybody's experiencing a lot. Like I said, I'm dealing with my own recovery, and so I'm like both impacted and trying to work simultaneously, and I know that's a lot of people's situation too. So anyway, just know that we're here, we're listening, and we want to actually provide anything that we can in order to accelerate the recovery efforts.
There are some others. I'm trying to make sure we're hearing as many voices as possible, but being that I'm the moderator, you guys get to really hear my voice, so I just want to respond really quick. Because we're talking about housing, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about daycare, we're talking about seniors, we're talking about so many complexities that's happening in this aftermath of this disaster. And what I do want to say is a lot of the seniors in the Black community come to the luncheons on Wednesday. I have to say this because there's 150 families, Black families that are identified that come just to this basement, this hall, every Wednesday, looking for your support, looking for Alta Rising, looking for everything that I'm hearing. Those seniors that need support with those agencies, we have all of them throughout this room. The agencies are here, but they're not hearing from those that are not coming. They do need that help to be able to get that one-on-one service for the agencies. That is a component and that complements the work that the agencies is doing, that My Tribe Rise is providing, is for these conversations to happen, the questions to happen when the county and FEMA and Red Cross, all the different agencies are here to help the seniors do the one-on-one that they need, because they don't know how to go through the apps. They don't have their laptops out, but we make sure the laptops are here. We make sure that all the agencies are there to be able to give that one-on-one service. But what I'm asking is for you all to come and talk to the Black community that's not hearing this conversation tonight. Usually it's 80 to 90% Black community members in this hall, and they need to hear what is going on and what the options are, what the pauses can be, what the get on your both feet is, what the disaster plan from A to Z. When I talk about mental health, that's what I see every time I'm here on these Wednesdays. They're coming and crying and holding on to me. Heavenly, what's next? All I can do is offer them what I know about. All I can do is offer them what you guys tell me are the different agencies are there. When I get the support to find out who's doing their due diligence to be sure that this information is coming to those seniors, that Black and brown community, and others?
So I do owners representation work. So I represent owners in this recovery process. And so that's how that 180 disaster plans started. I also represent a major property owner in downtown LA that has 700 fully furnished apartment units, 1 to 3 bedrooms. It's a new building, just new construction. One of the things that you should know, and I was informed as of today, the FEMA put out a RFI seeking landlords, and that was back in February. And I was told today by the government contracting officer that the state of California has not requested long-term housing assistance from FEMA. Right? It's a big problem. It's kind of crazy, right? So that's the thing that creates the initiative for FEMA to direct lease from landlords and place people in housing, right? So to Heavenly's point, people are trying, and we're doing this every day, right? Like working with families, and like, why can't I find the resources to do the thing, right? And the chaos in Washington is probably not helping, right? But what I'll say is that, like, that's some of the distinctive challenge. And so you need to know that FEMA does do direct leases with landlords, right? But for whatever reason, that is not happening, right? And so you need to, because I don't know who's in the room, I don't know who's online, I want you to know that, because there was an RFI that went out. There's 700 units that are sitting in downtown LA, and the landlord is asking, hey, we need to furnish these units for people. We need to know now, how many of them do you need, right? But they haven't been told, right? So there's a functional breakdown in what's happening between government, I would say probably between the federal, state, and local government. And you all are the only people who can do that. I can't do that for you, right? You all, everybody online, you're the only people who can do something about that.
Yeah, that's good. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Demetrius. And one thing that I think is important to nuance in that as well is that on our intake form, the majority of people, as we're collecting data about the people that need help, their FEMA status is applied, pending, applied, declined, universally, across the board. Applied, pending, told to reapply, applied, pending, applied, declined. Very few people of the 200 plus that we have received anything from FEMA. In the meantime, right, the bills are coming. You got to find a place to live. You have all of that. So I do want to point out that nuance, and I think maybe that speaks to your point about the disconnect between federal, state, and local, right? And just the backlog that can be bureaucracy sometimes, if we're being honest in that, right? And that's not to say that won't happen, or that it won't be figured out. Or I do believe in our state officials and our assemblymen. You know, I believe they are doing things, and there are bills on the table, and they're trying to get, mortgage relief, and they're trying, there are initiatives and bills on the table, and Remy can speak to those more specifically. But what I will say, to your point, is that it might not be exclusively on the side, there's a disconnect somewhere as well with FEMA, because FEMA ain't for everybody.
Well, the other piece that I'll tell you is that this is why in some cases people need representation and not just management of cases. Because the way the FEMA process works is disasterassistance.gov, as some of you have seen, consistently asks you for more and more information. And so if you don't respond timely enough, then that assistance is often denied. And so in many of the cases when I'm going in, we're going in for the person and saying, okay, let's look at it. We have access to the email account. So we're saying, okay, what is actually happening here? Hey, we need that document. Where are you at? Like, I need that thing. Now, we know in advance what to ask the person for when we sit down with them in the initial consultation. But that's a lot of times what you're seeing happen, is that you can be disqualified from FEMA for not having your driver's license, right? Like, which is crazy. But, I would say that, like, that's the world in which we're dealing with. And so we do have an immediate sort of housing crisis that we need to address, right? That really, before you can have a bigger conversation around a land trust or a land bank, it's sort of hard at this moment to have the conversation because you're dealing with so many people who are in crisis. And I'll add to that that the HUD, because it took me forever to figure this out, HUD did extend its foreclosure protection until July the 7th, right, as of right now. And so don't worry about that particular thing until then.
I know we had a couple more questions, and are we checking time?
I know we're checking time. We started a little late, and if you would bear the next 20 minutes, if you have to leave, you have to leave. But that's what we're dealing with, and I'm going to this lady.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Been in the community for about 40 years, and with Altadena Heritage. And one thing I haven't heard here is no one's talking about the ARC, which is the with the ARC, the Altadena Recovery and Rebuild Commission. I think we should all be reaching out to our supervisor and saying, what's happening? She announced it more than a month. And I know people have been assigned to it who are not even allowed to say who they are. And we need some sort of central leadership that's been so lacking, some kind of coordination. We need more kinds of housing because there's a lot of different needs, and we don't want to lose our renters, our young people, our artists and musicians. And I think that if many people would start to contact Supervisor Barger and to say what's happening, because apparently there's a big plan that none of us are hearing about.
Well, hi, I'm Layla. I'm with the Future Organization, 25 years as it is a little wonky, isn't it? I'm going to hold it right here. Anyway, lived here for 25 years, raised my kids here in Altadena and Pasadena schools, and okay, let me see. Everyone's talking about the need for data and how there's disparate approaches and, so many different variations on what people need to rebuild and get on with their lives. Our firm created a survey about 8 weeks ago after 3 weeks of volunteering at the Eagles in Altadena and hearing different stories and having it tested. Okay, I don't want to be on camera. After hearing story after story and talking to friends and people who have been directly affected and displaced or total loss, we put together this survey because we felt it was important to have Altadena tell its story as people are just moving on and here's what we're going to do and here's what we're going to do. There's no actual data that's statistically reliable that represents the truth of what happened in the community, what people need, and what their hopes are for rebuilding. So I just want to encourage all of you to take the survey, tell your neighbors and friends and community members. There's flyers on the table with the QR code. Apologies if that's not the right technology for you, but if you have a neighbor who can't do it because they don't have a smartphone, if you could sit with them and walk them through the 20 minutes. We're trying to make sure, we're trying to reach 1,000 participants. We have 750 right now. We've been volunteering pro bono. Nobody's sponsoring us. Our firm works with government and nonprofits, and we really want to have an impact by being able to write a report that's available for nonprofits, foundations, and government to say, this is what happened, this is what Altadena needs, and here's how you can help us. So I really would appreciate it if you could help us get to the finish line. Thank you.
because I know it's getting late, and I feel like I love to respect people's time, because I like for people to respect my time as well. What I've heard tonight, I've heard a lot of great news. I've heard about housing. I've heard about different options when it comes to housing. I heard about basically a companion plan, someone that's kind of walking this aftermath. I've heard about ARC, and I really think what Michelle is bringing up about ARC is really important, that we tap in to understand what's happening with that. Make those calls to Supervisor Barger. I just want to be sure we're leaving with some action plans before people walk out today. So I know my action tonight, I'm going to be connecting with as many of the different organizations. I'm going to make sure I'm connected more with Jasmine, so I can so we can connect the dots of those who are needing all of us, right? So I'm gonna make sure that's the action plan I'm gonna take. I'm also gonna take Michelle Zach up on calling Supervisor Barger and finding out what's going on with ARRC. I did hear Demetrius bring that up earlier. I also thank you, Remy, for the three options you started us off with from the beginning, the community to community. I did write them all down. So I know I received from having this conversation, talk and listen tonight. I hope that you all also received, talk and listen. I think we're going to just take maybe a couple of more questions, or we're not. Zaire wants, come on up, Zaire. Close us out. I saw Danny. I see so many people that are very much involved in our community. I see Kirsten. I don't want to start calling names, but I see so many of us who are very concerned about our community, and I'm thankful to see all your faces, because this is how we're going to get through this, is by us having these conversations together.
So I just wanted to piggyback on what the gentleman from HUD was saying. The organizations of being able to centralize everything with the information has been the issue, because I know I am running around and there's so many people who have millions of dollars who are willing and ready to donate to Altadena in our community. I'm in talks with a lot of them. The fear is that it's not going to go to the people who it should go to. So policing that has been the hardest part, and I can say for the whole community, that's why I've been running around trying to figure out how to do it. So the central part of it is trying to get it all centralized, so we can know that the money is going to a certain place, so we can know, we already know where the houses have burned down, so you can literally just go address by address. I don't understand why it's that hard, but it is an issue when it comes to organizing that part, and there's no systems in place for any of this. So that's why it's chaotic, and because of other movements that have happened in the past and the money's never gotten to the people, people are scared, meaning the philanthropy people are terrified to just go with random corporations and all of these docs and orgs and churches, because the money does not get back to them. And it's happening all over the place. So when we talk about the predatory things that are happening, it is happening. And it's not just happening with bad people that you see. There's churches who are taking percentages from people who are donating before they give it out. And I've been going crazy about that. Like, give it to the people. Why would you take a part of it before it goes to, I don't care what, whether you're Catholic, Jewish, whatever it is, make sure it goes back to the people. So all these things are going on. And we need to organize and have a central place and a central voice as a community is the only thing that's going to help us. And like she said, there's not one organization. My Tribe Rise has been working in the community before this disaster. A lot of these new people are coming around and I've never seen before, and I'm looking at that also. And if you're willing to help, it's great and it's a blessing. But there's so much community stuff that people, Michelle and different organizations that I see in here that have been helping and boots on the ground, to give credit to all those organizations. But we need to organize together. It's 6,000, 8,000 structures. We're not gonna even have enough construction people to even take care of all of this stuff. So it can't be an individual thing. So that's what I've been trying to sit down and meet. I met with Mayor Bass. Now I'm trying to meet with Catherine next after I lined up all the information to be able to present in a unified way so it benefits the whole community as a whole. So that's the most important part that's been a problem is we have all these little groups that all mean well, including everybody means well because everybody's trying to do for the community. But if we don't come together and do it as a full group, meaning everybody goes on one page, one paper, here go all the organization, here goes all the construction people, here go all the people who are gonna do this, put them all together and say, hey, we need our houses built, let's drop the prices, put it in order so we can streamline it across for the whole community, because that's the issue that we're having is,
quite often too. But I hear we all have data. Everybody got data.
no, let me say this, it's not, and that's the problem. So when we say data, they, what is the American Corps, who's the guy who's doing our lots? Thank you, the Army Corps, they have everybody's information. So it's funny that we can't find all this information and come together, but they have everybody's information. Samaritan's Purse, I went down and watched their database. Their database, they know every time a lot's gonna be cleared and everybody's information. So there's ways to just pull it all together, and we need to all work together, and all these groups need to come together and not be separate so we can have a community back. That's my issue. And the elders are being railroaded. And I'm not going to get into all of that because I'll get too emotional because I've been running around fighting that fight like crazy. Is literally our elders. They shouldn't have to do any of this. There's no way. These are pen and paper people. These are pen and paper elders who built this community, and we're asking them to go check this out and look for this and relive their pain and anger of 80 years of living. And my mother's one of them. This should not be happening in any way. So even when this first started, and I want to go out there, but they making people stand in line, wait for male elders who can't walk and do, it's just lines to go pick up money. You guys gonna send me on one. It's bad. That's what I'm trying to say. And people are taking advantage of us. All these food bank drives and church drives, there were other people from all over the communities are coming in, and I don't even want to go there. But again, it's just literally saying we need to come together was the most important part I wanted to make, and say that there are funds out there. Please hold on to your properties if you can, because there are really genuinely millions of dollars. She knows there's people who are willing to donate. I'm telling you this personally. I can stand on, there are entertainers who told me personally, I will give millions of dollars. Where, how? Where's the central place to drop it off so it can get straight to all of the individuals who lost their homes, instead of it just being spread out into some fund that you got to go apply for?
Thank you so much.
That's you good. You good. You good.
There's a way that we land on what he just said about bringing together. I appreciate that even Layla brought are accessing information, and how he just, Zaire just brought up how FEMA, all these places, they have all the information in one base, or not. I just saw Demetrius shake his head. But really quick, before we go there, Demetrius, I want us to think about this. I see so many leaders here, and we all are collecting information from everybody. I mean, every person is filling out 10, 12 different forms. What are we going to do to fix it? Like, are we really going to fix it, or are we just going to talk about it tonight? Or are we really going to find a way where we're going to share information, where we're going to have one central database, all the information that we can all collectively use to make our community whole? I just wanted Demetrius to say something real quick. Before we can finish.
No flow. So I just met this morning with the folks who are the search consultant that's looking for a CEO for ARC, right? So that's part of the challenge. It's like, and it's entirely about this very question, which is like, hey, there are all of these efforts. So Zaire, your point is well-founded, and that is the exact thing that the supervisor is is looking at and thinking about, which is like, how do we pull all of these groups together? Yeah, I don't know her either. But anyway, she'll be here tomorrow at your luncheon. And so that is the central question of how to pull all the groups together. And so I always want to end with some degree of encouragement, right? Yeah, Flo, come on, Flo, come on.
You guys are killing me. No, there's more than hope. We don't start at hope, there's more than hope. But I want to be so thankful for everybody here tonight, and I'm thankful that Zaire said something that Pasadena's Organizing for Progress. We didn't want to put this together to, like somebody said, here's another meeting, right? We wanted to be able to convene Altadenians, because I feel personally the Altadenians won't just win, you will receive your justice. Amen. Right? It's not about winning. This is about justice. Yes. And justice can only be found when you decide to collect people power. And people power is in this room. There's different organizations, and those different organizations have to come to the table, put your egos aside, put your titles aside, and put Altadena in the center. And when we do that, and you say, I have this, I have this, and you have this, that's where action takes place. Like she said, it's not Green Line, it's not Moreno Strategies, it's not My Tribe, it's not ARC, it's Altadena. It's everybody living next to each other that can make this make sense. And when Altadena glues itself, then the funders will flow. They're not looking for one person. They're not looking for two people. They're looking for the movement. And when you guys get the movement and you stand there with a press conference and said enough is enough, and this is what we demand, our justice, Catherine Barger, Karen, the governor, everybody, then people will stand up and listen. Now, Pasadena's Organizing for Progress, this is not our first thing. The land trust tonight, the value of the money was very, very important. Like Dimitri says, yes, housing is very important, but we have to have all these different conversations because everybody belongs in different pockets. And so the land trust people have to come together. The housing people have to come together. The resource people have to, the senior lovers have to come together, right? And the elder carers have to come together. And so we're going to have these conversations, and we're going to move around Altadena and Pasadena. And the next one you'll be hearing in the next week on our social media, because we believe that Altadena can create a movement. So I know that there isn't a aha. The solution is in every single one of you. There's no one person that's got a solution. It's in every single, and as you fight for one another, aha. But like I said, thank you so much for your time. Please don't leave no food here, right? Or no fresca. I want to thank you to Green Line. I want to thank you to Demetrius, Emmy. I want to thank you to our wonderful moderator, Heavenly. But more than that, I want to thank Altadena. Keep being it.